Hello, my name is Jason, aka Fuzz Pixels, and today's video is going to be something a little bit different. A few days ago I posted online saying that I was thinking about doing a Q&A video, the questions and answers. Some of you lovely people have provided the Q, I will provide the A, so let's do it. Alright, so Waldo UPM, he's going straight in with the tough questions here. SNES or N64, so SNES, some of you might prefer to say, but I like to say SNES. SNES or N64, which one fills your heart the most? That is well tough. I suppose I'm going to have to go with SNES just because it was the first console I ever saw. I remember being about, I think I was 4 or 5 years old, my parents' friend was round and he had bought a SNES round to sort of show my parents because it was this cool new thing. I remember walking into the living room and they were playing Mario Kart on the SNES and it blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like it. I'd played a couple of sort of little PC games and stuff before that, but this was Mario Kart, you know, and I was completely blown away. It was pretty magical. So I guess just for the reason of it being my first console and having that kind of memory of it being such a new magical thing, as much as I love N64 and obviously that was just next level, I think I'm gonna have to go with SNES. Okay, so Waldo UPM also asks, where do you usually start your covers? Guitars, drums, bass? So good question. I suppose it's probably almost always drums. I kind of tend to hear a lot of how I want everything to sound in my head before I do anything. But in terms of laying stuff down, I'm not a drummer. I don't play the drums. I'm terrible. You know, I'm quite good with my hands, but when my feet get involved, it's just awful. So I program my drum parts, and then that's usually kind of the foundation. A lot of people like to do drums, then get the bass in, and then do the rest, but actually I do drums, get guitar parts down, and then I kind of slot the bass in around everything else. So that seems to work for me in my weird little brain. Say Lily has asked, when did you start recording songs and why? So I was in my first kind of little band when I was about 14, 15, and a couple of years after that is when we kind of got into doing demos at home on, you know, really badly. It sounded awful. I found some the other day and it's so fun to listen to, but yeah, they didn't sound good. So I guess that was kind of when, you know, I took an interest in programming drum parts and all that kind of stuff and sort of honing my skills there. I tended to write a lot of the drum parts for the bands I was in. So yeah, I suppose that was kind of the beginning of my journey of recording music, sort of doing home demos and stuff like that. I'm definitely not at a point where I feel confident and I can just sit down and know exactly what I'm doing. No stress. I'm definitely not at that point yet, but hopefully one day. Okay, she also asks, what's a song you always wanted to cover, but you feel like you're not quite there yet? One-Winged Angel from Final Fantasy VII is a track that's been on my list for so long, and every time I hear it, I just think, what am I going to do with this? I have no idea how to turn it into a Fuzz Pixels arrangement yet, but it's still on my list. It's one that I'm gonna do one day. No idea what it's gonna sound like. Let me know if you're up for hearing a Fuzz Pixels One-Winged Angel. Let me know in the comments. If it's something that enough of you want, I will persevere and I'll power through. I will overcome my fear of not being there yet. I will do my best and I'll make something happen. Waves and Games says, when did you get your first guitar and what was it? So my first ever guitar was a little half-size acoustic that my dad bought me when I was 5 years old, and I still have it somewhere. He plays a bit of guitar and he started teaching me guitar when I was about 5, and I learned to strum, you know, maybe an E chord and a G chord, and then a few years later I kind of started teaching myself. I remember one time my dad accidentally trod on it and put a big hole in it, and it's got all this gaffer tape, kind of taping the whole thing up, and he felt terrible, as you can imagine. And yeah, but I quite like that. I think it makes me laugh every time I see it, because it just reminds me of how clumsy my dad is. Waves and Games also asks, second question, power of flight or the power of teleportation? It's got to be teleportation, right? If you're thinking of flying somewhere, why are you flying there? Just be there straight away. Press a button, you're there. You don't even need to fly. Jack Harvey says, what made you decide to start making video game covers? Jack, that is a very good question. 2020, lockdowns, all that kind of stuff. I suppose like what a lot of people were doing during that time is feeling quite nostalgic and sort of looking back to better times past. So I was listening to a lot of podcasts and stuff to do with retro gaming and video game music. So I think I had probably something from Mario 64 in my head. And I was just, it kind of came out of nowhere really, but I was just imagining it as this kind of fast skate punk song, and I was kind of drumming along to it and I thought this could be pretty cool. And I had some pretty old ropey recording equipment at home. It wasn't even mine, I borrowed it from a friend. And I just, the next day I kind of thought, well, I need to just get this down, so it's just out of my head, and I just want to hear what it sounds like. It was just a lot of fun. So I posted something online, and very quickly realised that there was this really cool kind of community around this stuff, and there were so many people that had similar interests, doing a similar kind of thing, just doing all these wild arrangements of all this different video game music. I just thought, wow, I want to be part of that. This is cool, It's a very nice thing to be part of. Dream Pillet. Pillet? I guess we'll go with Pillet. Okay, so Dream Pillet on YouTube says physical amps / pedals or amp sims / virtual effects / VSTs. Any personal favourite tool / piece of gear? So my main job, my main source of income is I sing and play in a band that does a lot of weddings and corporate events and all that kind of stuff. I use pedals when I play live. I will show you my pedal board. Ta-da! And I have a couple of amps. I've got a Fender Blues Junior and a Marshall JCM 800, and they're incredible, but I just don't use them live because it's just inconvenient. You don't need to. I have a SansAmp fly rig pedal, and you can plug that straight into the desk, and it sounds like an amp, and you don't have to carry heavy stuff around. It's great. In terms of recording fuzz pixel stuff, I don't use pedals or amps for that. I just I do it all in the box. I've got a Guitar Rig 6 Pro, and that's got all these virtual pedals and amps and so many options. You just don't need to spend all this time getting a microphone in the right place on an amp and faffing around with all that stuff. I guess if you've got a big studio and lots of time, it might be nice to mic up amps and all that kind of stuff, but it's not for me. I just don't see the point these days. Alright, so JamJam117 on YouTube says, cliche, but what inspired you to start doing video game music covers? And are there any soundtracks that you think are bad and you could try fixing them yourself? So I think that's similar to Jack's question, so maybe I don't need to cover that again. But are there any soundtracks you think are bad and you could try fixing them yourself? I mean, I don't think it's really about fixing anything. It's just a different take on something, I suppose. I tend to just avoid anything that I don't think will work. I don't think I'd really want to just do, cover something that I don't like just to try and fix it. Most of the time I just cover stuff that is stuff I really enjoy in the first place, and I just want to put my own spin on it, basically. Diet Water asks, how did you get so good on the guitar and how long did it take? Well, first of all, thank you so much for saying that I'm good at guitar. It's taken since the age of 5, basically. I probably could have put a lot more effort in over the years, and you know, by now, really after that amount of time, I should be able to be one of those shredder guys that can play insanely fast and like does double-handed tapping. But I suppose also the kind of music that I enjoy doesn't really involve that kind of virtuoso playing, you know. I can appreciate, you know, all those kind of guitarists like Joe Satriani and Yngwie Malmsteen and all that, and it's very impressive, but it's just not my thing, I suppose. You know, I'm not really that into guitar. I just like music, and guitar is a thing that you can play music on, if that makes sense. The second part of this question, what do you do to translate a song into the pop rocky genre, such as how do you go about changing and finding chords from songs and converting them, etc.? That's a very good question, actually, because that's something that I just get so much satisfaction from and really enjoy doing. What do they call it? It's like reharmonizing, I suppose, is the term. You know, where you can take a melody but you change the chords underneath. I might do a loop of the melody and then just move my hand around and sort of, I've got a bit of music theory knowledge, so it usually doesn't take me that long. It's not a complete wild guess. I think that's one of the many kind of magical things about music, really, is the fact that you can do things like that and completely kind of change the feel of the same selection of notes, you know, just by changing the chords underneath it. And you know, it makes you feel a completely different emotion when you hear it, even though it's the same notes over the top. Dog Soap says, favourite overall game soundtracks? Also, Happy New Year. Thanks for all the awesome videos in 2022. Well, Happy New Year to you, Dog Soap. It's probably no secret that everyone knows I love the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack. I think probably still my favourite of all time. Nobuo Uematsu is just, he's like the John Williams of video game music, isn't he? He's a big boy. Nostalgia is a powerful thing, isn't it? So it's hard to know sometimes, if you're looking back through the nostalgia lens, if a soundtrack is really, really that amazing, or if you perceive it to be really, really amazing because of the nostalgia. But I do think, obviously, the Donkey Kong Country games, David Wise, the feeling that he conveys through the music in those games is just wild. I don't know if it's just because I'm old or what it is, but I feel like a lot of games from the 90s had the best soundtracks. Obviously there's definitely exceptions to that rule. I'm not just old man shouting at cloud, but I feel like in the early days of gaming, because they didn't have all these amazing sounds to work with, they had to come up with really good melodies to make up for that. And I feel like more recently, because you can just make things sound great sonically, you can kind of get away with not having really strong melodic ideas and harmonic ideas. I suppose a lot of 90s games kind of really do stand out for me. Mario 64 is one. Obviously the Zelda series, you know, so many great bits of music in all the Zelda games, especially Ocarina of Time. One of my other favourites is actually Prince of Persia. I don't know if any other ports had a different soundtrack or not, but the Super Nintendo version of Prince of Persia has incredible music. Also, Secret of Mana on the Super Nintendo has some of my favourite video game music of all time, and I haven't actually covered any music from that game yet, so maybe that'll see the light of day at some point. Oh, Chrono Trigger as well. That's up there with my favourites. I didn't even play it for the first time until maybe 2 years ago, and instantly became probably one of my top 5 games of all time and top 5 soundtracks of all time. Incredible stuff. I sound pretty basic here, don't I? Because I'm just stating all the obvious choices for favourite soundtracks, but it's just because they are so good, and that's why they're so popular, isn't it? Shiny New JB says, anything about your favourite gear and or software would be interesting. Also, how did you first get into music? What are your favourite albums of all time? Alright, so we got kind of 3 questions here, really, haven't we? Your favourite gear and or software. Yeah, so I'm not really that much of a gear nerd. You know, I have some cool plugins, a Waves bundle and a Native Instruments plugin bundle, and all the good stuff that a lot of people use. Get good drums, modern and massive. That's probably the thing that I probably couldn't do without, because it just has incredible drum sounds. You can just do so much with them. So, you know, without that, I don't have a drum kit. I don't have any other way of recording or laying down drum parts. So also, how did you first get into music? What are your favourite albums of all time? So I was very lucky actually when I was growing up. So I come from a kind of split household, you know, but my mum and my stepdad have always been really into music, and my dad and my stepmum have always been really into music as well. So I've just been exposed to so many different genres, so much stuff. I think it would be weird if I wasn't into music, you know, growing up in those kind of households. Favourite albums of all time is a pretty tricky one. I suppose OK Computer by Radiohead is probably right up there as being one of my favourite, if not my favourite album of all time. The Wall by Pink Floyd. Futures by Jimmy Eat World. I think that's just faultless. It's like, for me, that is the perfect emo album. Visu by Thrice is one of my favourite albums of all time. Just, I think it kind of broke a lot of new ground when it came out. I'm pretty sure I read a review of it and it was described as post-hardcore. So it was kind of it was just doing new things and ticking new boxes that I didn't even know existed. Highway to Heck says, what artists inspire your music? I suppose it depends, you know, what subgenre I'm working with in my weird little kind of Warped Tour video game music realm. If I'm doing a kind of skate punk type thing, I suppose it's, you know, bands like The Offspring and NoFX and Lagwagon. If I'm doing something that's kind of heavier, on the heavier side and maybe a bit slower, I guess I'm inspired by Thrice, Alexis on Fire, Under Oath, Saosin, Circa Survive, that kind of thing. And I don't listen to those bands, you know, that often these days, just because I sometimes go back to them, you know, for a nice little nostalgia trip. But I think without me even knowing, it's in there somewhere. And then if I'm doing something that's a bit more of an emo vibe, where it's not quite punk, but it's not really on the kind of heavier side, it's gonna, you know, it's bands like Jimmy Eat World, Taking Back Sunday. You know, you've got 3 subgenres there that all fit into that kind of that Warped Tour type vibe. Alright, so Sega Blocks, or Blocks Sega, or Sega and Mr. Blocks, one of those 3, whichever you prefer to go by. Leaving out punk, rock, emo, metal, post-hardcore, metalcore, or any heavy genre, what is some of your favourite musical artists or inspirations? Okay, so when I was a kid, I was very lucky, really. There was always different music on in the house. There would be Frank Zappa one minute, and then it would be The Prodigy, and then it would be some kind of 80s thrash like Slayer or Metallica, and then there'd be some, you know, 60s trippy psychedelic stuff like gong or Hawkwind, or you know, there was just all this different stuff. So yeah, I suppose my kind of musical palette, so to speak, is quite broad. You know, there's so much different music that I'm into. I'm not too bothered about genre really. If it's good, I like it. I've got quite a big soft spot for you know, electronic music. I went through quite a big phase of not a phase, it's not a phase, mum, but you know, a period in my life where I was listening to a lot of stuff like The Prodigy or the Chemical Brothers or Left Field, the Propeller Heads and all that kind of stuff. I feel like there was a lot of good electronic music around in the late 90s, early 2000s. I love stuff like Radiohead, I like The Cure, I like you know, I listen to drum and bass if it's good. I also like a lot of mellower stuff. I like, you know, The National, The War on Drugs I really like, Gang of Youths, Strand of Oaks, that kind of vibe. What genre is that? You know, what genre are The National? Let me know in the comments. I have no idea. So I've just been incredibly lucky to be able to grow up in a very musical household. You know, there was always music on in the house or on car journeys. So I'm kind of hashtag blessed, I suppose. Alright, I think this might be the last question we're going to go with today. So we've got a question from Azzy on Twitter at AECairo. Probably butchered that name, so I'm very sorry. I want a whole documentary. I just want to... Sorry, I'll start that again. I want a whole documentary. Lol, just kidding. I want to know about your gear, programs, how you edit your videos, mixing process if possible, ways to promote and collaborations. I just want to know more to have knowledge. I love the way you do literally everything. Wow, that is so nice. Thank you. It's probably a whole video in itself, which I'll probably do at some point. I might do a video on how I mix my tracks. I might do another one on how I edit my videos. Yeah, if you want to see kind of full videos on these specific topics, let me know in the comments. Mixing has just been something that over the last year or so, I've gotten into a lot more. I don't really know what I'm doing. I've sort of watched some videos on how to try and make things sound good, and you know, like mastering chains to try and get things loud without sounding all, you know, distorted and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of sonic science behind all that stuff that I don't understand still, but you know, it's a journey and I'm working my way through it. Same with editing. I still don't really know what I'm doing. I use Final Cut Pro. I just film a load of stuff and throw it together and put some transitions in to make it, you know, try and make myself look less boring really. So yeah, like I say, it's going to be a bit of a longer breakdown of those specific things. Yeah, let me know if you want to see more stuff like that, and I can delve into it. But yeah, so that's going to be it for today's video. If you are watching this and you're thinking, I didn't see this, I want to ask you a question and figure out some stuff, and I want to know stuff, pop a thing in the comments section. Do that and I'll read it, and if there's enough for another video, then I'll make another video. But yeah, until then, don't forget to subscribe, hit the little bell thing so you get notified about all the things that I do. Like the video, go and watch one of these videos. There's going to be videos on the screen somewhere around here, and yeah, keep it fuzzy. I'll see you soon.